On a sunny and warm, it's a Thursday afternoon. Welcome on into the bullpen. I am your host, Adam the Bull, and this live podcast is brought to you by Bet Rivers. Guardians game going on right now. They're down 4-1 in the third. Didn't feel good about today's game with that bum Spencer Howard that they picked up pitching for him today, and not surprisingly, he's given up 4 runs in, 2 1/3 innings? 2 2/3 innings. He just gave up a home run in the bottom of the third. So not good. A lot to get to today, mostly about the Browns. Pretty much all about the Browns. I'll keep you up to date on the Guardians-Tigers game if you're with us live. I want to hear from you. Get in that chat. Send your questions my way. The conversation today is all about the Browns and the questions that you have about this team heading into training camp. We've hit the rare part of the season where there's not a lot of football to talk about because there's no free agents signing, although I did see Jamal Adams sign today. But it's the only quiet time of the year in football is really June into July before training camp starts. But training camp is now right around the corner. And that means we are going to start, and most importantly, the Browns are going to start getting the answers to their questions. And so the question I have for you folks today, and I'll give you my answer, is what are the biggest question marks for this team in your mind heading into the season? Now, the obvious one is Deshaun Watson, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But I want to focus on some other things because that's something we've talked about a lot. We'll continue to talk about it a lot. But there are other things, and there are other questions about this team, as there is about every team. There's no team going into training camp saying, everything's perfect, we're good to go. No. Now, let me give you some important information for those who may not know. Training camp officially begins for the Browns or at least the rookies, on July 22nd. That is 11 days from today. 11. I am actually flying out of town the next day on July 23rd, which is when the veterans report. So I'll be out of town for a week at the beginning of training camp and then get locked back in after that. But rookies report on July 22nd. That's a Monday, 11 days from now. And then the veterans on July 23rd, of course, in Berea. They are going to West Virginia again. The Browns' first preseason game is less than a month away. Saturday, August the 10th. Browns are playing 3 Saturday games in the preseason. The first one, Saturday, August the 10th. So we're 19, 20, 30 days? 30 days from today. 4 weeks and change. That's it. In 4 weeks, we got in 3 weeks, you got the Hall of Fame game. But in 4 weeks, you got preseason for the Browns and everybody else. It's here. It's almost here. Almost back. They'll play the Packers in the first preseason game on August the 10th. And the Vikings in the second preseason game on August the 17th. Both those games are in Cleveland. Both those games are 4:25 starts. And then their final preseason game, Saturday, August the 24th in Seattle. That is a 10 p.m. start, which is crazy. I know it's on the West Coast in Seattle, but even with West Coast games, there's never a game starting at 10 p.m. So that's bizarre. That game will be over after 1 a.m, but not like any of the starters are going to play. So the first question is, and we won't have this question answered for a month. We won't get the answers to these questions or most of these questions when training camp starts. But the question is, in those 3 preseason games on August 10th, August 17th, and August 24th, who's playing? Will we see Deshaun Watson at all when the Browns take the field 30 days from now? Will we see Nick Chubb? I shouldn't say will we see Nick Chubb. We're not going to see Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is not playing in the preseason. I'm going to say that with 100% confidence, and I don't. That may be unfair to be 100% confident, but and let me clarify. I'm not saying Nick Chubb is not going to play in those games because he might not be, because he's not ready. I don't know if he's going to be ready. He might be physically ready. I'm saying that even if he is physically ready to play, he will not play in the preseason. Giving Nick Chubb a single snap in the preseason would be insanity. And so that will not happen. We will not see him play. But Deshaun Watson coming off injury. Amari Cooper had an injury at the end of the year. Will we see the veteran wide receiver play at all? Jerry Jeudy, who they just acquired and signed to a contract. How much will we see of these guys, other veterans? Will we see Deonta Foreman or Nyheim Hines? Will we see Jameis Winston and Tyler Huntley? We'll see them in the preseason. I don't know that we'll see Jameis Winston that much. It's not like he's got much to prove. We kind of know what Jameis Winston is. You know, he's at worst a very high quality backup. He could be a starter, not a great starter. We know that. He throws too many picks. But I don't know that Jameis Winston's going to play a lot. Will we see Cade York get a chance to win the Browns kicking job back? Plus some veteran linebackers that the Browns brought in, Devin Bush, Jordan Hicks. How much will we see of them in training camp? So I'll be curious. Kevin Stefanski generally has leaned towards not playing veteran players much in the preseason, and I'm fine with that. I am, no doubt about it. Obviously, the Deshaun Watson situation remains the biggest storyline. As with everything else in life, people have taken their camps. I refuse to be in camps in any of these things. And we've decided that there are some people who have decided now that we're gonna look at the stats in a twisted way and figure out ways to argue that Deshaun Watson has played well. This is silly. He's not played well. Every rational person knows that Deshaun Watson has not played well. The Browns did not trade 3 first-round picks plus and pay him $250 million plus to be maybe mediocre at best. That's not what happened here. So you could turn the numbers however you want, make them read whatever you want. Stats can be manipulated. If you're watching with your eyes, you're seeing, you understand he has not played well. Now, that doesn't mean he can't. I spoke with former NFL quarterback Steve Berline yesterday. If you missed that podcast, go back and check it out. And Steve Berline, like me, feels this is Deshaun Watson's last chance this year. But he believes that Deshaun Watson will get back on track this year. Get over the mental hurdles that have been part of the problem. Obviously, the physical hurdles that have been part of the problem. And ultimately, we will start having our questions answered in the preseason, in training camp. But but in reality, the questions about Deshaun Watson will not be answered until the season begins. And then we can argue about how well he played in each of these games. But I think we know what a franchise quarterback looks like. I know the Browns haven't had many, but we know it. You know when you see a special quarterback. Deshaun Watson was a special quarterback in Houston. There's no doubt about it. He has not been a special quarterback in Cleveland. Not at all. I don't even want to hear about the second half against the Ravens. Con yourself into whatever you want. He's not been a special quarterback in Cleveland. Doesn't mean he can't be, because he's been before. He's still young enough. We need to see it. That's obviously the biggest storyline. But again, there'll be no answers to that in training camp in the preseason. Maybe some. The answers on Deshaun Watson in training camp are, is he healthy? That's it. Because the question about Deshaun Watson is, the first question is he healthy? The second question is he good? The second question can't be answered until we get into the season. The first question can be answered, at least on some level, in the preseason, in training camp. Is he throwing normally when training camp begins? Is he throwing as much as anybody else would, or as much as he would in the past? Now, some other questions about this team. And if you have your questions, put them in the YouTube chat. You can send me a tweet as well if you want. If you want to jump in with me, we'll put out the link for you, and you can join me live on the podcast. But some of the things that some of the other questions that I'm looking at in the preseason is competition for jobs. Number one, if Nick Chubb is not ready to go week one, and at this point, I certainly wouldn't bet against Nick Chubb, but we don't know for sure he's going to be ready. Even if he is, he probably won't take a full complement of carries as he had in the past. What will the rest of the backfield look like? I mentioned earlier the Browns added Deontay Foreman and Nyheim Hines. Obviously, they have Jerome Ford still. Pierre Strong is still here. They won't all be. If Nick Chubb's healthy and ready to go to start the season, I can't imagine they're going to keep 5 running backs. Does that mean Pierre Strong is gone? He showed some little life last year at times, didn't get much of an opportunity. Or is it possible Nyheim Hines doesn't make the team? He's a return specialist in addition to being a running back, and he's been a good pass catcher out of the backfield. But he did miss all of last season. He's not young, and, we'll see. Deontay Foreman will be here, and at times he's looked like a pretty good running back. Jerome Ford certainly will be here. I would think that if Nick Chubb is healthy, that means Pierre Strong's probably gone, and they'll keep Chubb, Ford, Hines, and Foreman is most likely. But if Nick Chubb's not ready to go, it'll be interesting to see what kind of rotation they use between Ford, Foreman, and Hines. Jerome Ford showed he could catch passes. Nyheim Hines, again, has been really, that's been his specialty on offense, has been catching passes. We could see a situation where Jerome Ford and Deontay Foreman split the traditional reps first and second down, and Nyheim Hines comes in as the third down back. Or maybe he just comes in as the third down back when Foreman's the first and second down back, and when Jerome Ford's in there, he takes all 3 downs. But I think, and even if Nick Chubb is ready to go, we will see some of the other guys. But obviously, if Nick Chubb is ready to go, that's going to be a big difference than if he's not, in terms of not only the quality of the back, but in terms of how the carries are divided, because somebody's going to get left out. Even if Nick Chubb is taking less carries than normal, there's still, you're going to have a situation where either Jerome Ford or Deontay Foreman may be inactive for a game. And it would probably be Foreman. I mean, Foreman's the more proven back, but he's older. Ford's been part of the organization now. This will be his 3rd year. But listen, it's all good stuff, assuming Nick Chubb's healthy. They've got a lot of depth and decent players at running back. And besides that, there's really no questions. The only other question in the starting lineup is if Jack Conklin, Jedrick Wills, and DeJuan Jones are all healthy, who's not starting? And there's a chance it's DeJuan Jones. Now, I think that would be a mistake. If all 3 are healthy, I mean, I would, in a perfect world, I'd start Conklin and DeJuan Jones, but neither one's really played left tackle, so they're not going to do that. But I think even if they're all healthy, I'm starting DeJuan Jones over Jack Conklin because he's hopefully my right tackle of the future. But I don't know that that's guaranteed. We know that Jerry Jeudy and Amari Cooper will start at wide receiver. Will the 3rd receiver be Elijah Moore? Could it be Cedric Tillman? Could it be Jamari Thrash, who the Browns drafted in the 5th round? That's something that will be worked out between training camp and the preseason. I don't think there's any doubt that Cedric Tillman and Jamari Thrash both have an opportunity to pass Elijah Moore on the depth chart. I think Elijah Moore is more of a veteran, and they traded for him last year, might have a leg up going in. But if Thrash or Tillman really stand out in the preseason, I think they have a chance to pass him, as they should. There's no reason why Elijah Moore should have that 3rd receiver spot on lockdown. Rest of the starters on offense, we know. There's really, there'll be some battle for roster spots. I mean, if everybody's healthy on the offensive line, you got obviously DeJuan Jones, Wills, Conklin, Teller, Pochich, Petonio, Zach Zinter, who was their 3rd-round pick last year, is the 7th offensive lineman. Hakeem Adeniji, a veteran tackle who they just signed. They'll probably keep him around, and then maybe Michael Dunn is the ninth offensive lineman. They still have James. I forgot about Luke Whippler, who they drafted last year. He'll be here. It'd be interesting to see what they do. They signed a veteran offensive lineman in Brian Allen from the Rams. Jermaine Iafetti is another veteran they brought in. So there is some depth on that offensive line. It'll be interesting to see who makes the final cut there. Will they keep a third tight end? Maybe not. In the past, Stefanski's used a lot of three tight end, but obviously they have Njoku and Akins. They don't really have a third tight end. Everybody else is like a undrafted free agent. So maybe they only go two tight ends this year. On the defensive side of the ball, I've got my eye on Alex Wright. I know they drafted Mike Hall Jr. with the second-round pick, so he's another young player to keep an eye on. But Alex Wright, I've got my eye on. I think in a perfect world, he ends up beating out Zadarius Smith for the defensive end spot on the other side of Myles Garrett. I loved what I saw from Alex Wright at the end of last season. And I'd like to see him take control of that job and then have Ogbo and Zadarius Smith rotating in. Obviously, they'll use all four outside, and that's some good depth there. At tackle, Shelby Harris and Dalvin Tomlinson will probably start. They signed Quentin Jefferson as a free agent, who's a nice pickup. They brought back Maurice Hurst. He'll be in the mix. And Mike Hall Jr., as we mentioned, second-round pick. Yet in a perfect world, he plays so great that they have to start him over Shelby Harris. That's what you'd love to see happen. But if it doesn't, it doesn't. They've got good depth there. That's 9 guys on the defensive line. That doesn't even include Isaiah McGuire and Siaki Ika, who were a fourth and third round pick last year, respectively. I don't think either of those guys have a guaranteed spot on the team. I mean, because I mentioned 9 guys that right now are better. At linebacker, obviously JOK and Jordan Hicks will be a top 2 guys there. They've moved on from Anthony Walker. They've moved on from Sione Takitaki. Devin Bush, who's been a bust mostly in his career, could be interesting. Tony Fields is still in the mix. They drafted Nathaniel Watson in the 6th round for some of the depth there at linebacker. We know the starters in the defensive backfield. I mean, Cade York, I guess, is going to have a chance to beat out Dustin Hopkins. I know that sounds silly, and I'm not a Cade York fan. He's been terrible, and Hopkins was great. But kicker is a year-to-year thing, except for a few guys. And Dustin Hopkins is not one of those few guys. If he stinks in the preseason and training camp, it's possible Cade York could win back that job. I'd bet on Hopkins, but it's not impossible. But for the most part, across the board, we know who the starters are on this team, and that's a major, major positive. That's what you want. You don't want to be in a situation, as the Browns had been for decades, where you go into training camp and you have guys battling for starting spots, and none of them are any good, and so you got to pick one. The Browns, at certain positions, they may have to cut or trade guys that are good players or decent players, NFL players. I mean, we talked about on the offensive line and the defensive line, there's tremendous depth. The Browns have more than, I'm not saying they're all perfect or that there's no holes within that group, like or when I say holes, like there could be a better starter. But there's a lot of good players, especially on the D-line and the O-line. Really, I mean, on the Browns' second-team defensive line, as of this moment, would be Alex Wright, Quentin Jefferson, Mike Hall Jr., and Ogbo Okoronkwo. I mean, that's pretty good. There's probably teams whose starting defensive line is some bad teams that are not better than that. Now, so obviously it's a lot of potential. Mike Hall Jr. hasn't played in the league, and Alex Wright hasn't played much. But there's a lot of potential, and Ogbo's played well, both with Jacksonville and here, and Quentin Jefferson's played really well with the Jets in the past. So the defensive line group is just fantastic. The Browns have a big edge there, and hopefully they won't be crushed by injuries like they were last year, especially in the offensive line more. And at running back, that's another position where, yes, they don't have a great player if Nick Chubb's not healthy, but they have tremendous depth. When Pierre Strong's your 5th running back, I think he's a 3rd running back for a lot of teams. There's other areas where they're a little thinner, but no, again, secondary, another area too. You look at the second team secondary, Cam Mitchell, Rodney McLeod, DeAnthony Bell, Ronnie Hickman. They got some good players in their second team secondary. Those are 4 decent players, and that's their, 6th through 9th DBs. So, so there's a lot of areas where not only do the Browns have good starters, but they have really good depth, which is why a lot of people think the Browns have one of the best rosters, and I'm with them. I do think the Browns have one of the best rosters, and why they're good quarterback play away from being a Super Bowl contender. And why I've continuously said, and we'll say again, that Deshaun Watson is the difference. If Deshaun Watson plays anywhere close to Houston, the Browns can win a Super Bowl. If he plays like he's played here, they'll be a playoff team and they'll get knocked out in the first round probably. It's a huge difference. All right, let's get to some messages in the YouTube chat. Albert says, good afternoon, Bull. Good afternoon to you, Albert. Phil, hello. Karen says, hey, Bull, I got to talk about the Guardians right now. That pitcher is trash. We need pitching bad. Yeah, I'll bring so the Guardians had to go with a guy named Spencer Howard, who they basically got on waivers. I think technically it was a trade. He had gotten designated for assignment. He's bounced around the league. He's not any good. I said on the UCSS today he's terrible. I said he'd go 4 innings, probably give up 4 runs. He didn't even go 4 innings. He got knocked out, let's see, after 3 innings, gave up 10 base runners and 4 runs, including a home run. So he stinks. They should get rid of him. It was a weird spot going with him. It was, and if they can't come back in this game, and they certainly can, it's not a blowout. It's 4-1. But if they can't come back in this game, it will be 3 of 4 on the losing side against the Tigers, which is not great. They're down 4-1, and the Tigers have second and third, nobody out in the bottom of the 4th. So not looking great right now. We've talked about this time and time again. The Guardians have a lot of work to do in terms of adding to the pitching staff. That's where it's a red light blinking. They've got to get 2 starting pitchers, in my opinion. I've said that consistently for a month. And it's now 6-1 Tigers. Phil says, I want that new running back from Utah, Aiden Robbins. He's a beast. I don't even know who he is. I see him listed on the Browns depth chart. I can't imagine he's going to play at all. There's I would say almost no chance he's going to make the team. If he was that much of a beast, he probably would have been drafted, but I guess you never know. Karen says, I believe the Browns are going to be really good. I'm counting on them this year. Browns forever. A lot of cool emojis. Thank you, Karen. They should be really good. Antonio says, Bull! Andy, Bull, what's your take on Watson playing in the preseason? I get the fear factor of the injuries, but Watson needs to get going early. Also, will Coach Vrabel be on the sidelines during the game? I would play Deshaun Watson a little in the preseason. I think that's what will happen. I know my man G. Bush does not want him to play at all. I understand that, but if you're so worried about him getting injured in 10 plays, then he's not going to last through the season anyway. I would play him a little. I think he needs some work. He has barely played football for 3 years. He's played 11 games of a possible 51. It's just, and the longer this goes, where he misses time. So I'd get him some work in the preseason. I know there's a level of risk there. And I would certainly play all the first-team offensive linemen, including Bitonio and Teller. I would only play those guys when Deshaun Watson is on the field. But you have to have him out there. I think you should do it. What they will do, I don't know. My gut tells me they'll play Deshaun Watson if he's physically able. If they're not worried about a setback, like if he's good to go in terms of throwing, which it seems he is, then my gut tells me they will get him out there a little bit, but not much. Maybe 1 or 2 series max between the 3 preseason games. In terms of Coach Vrabel being on the sideline, I'm not sure about that. I hadn't really thought about it at all. I don't know what the plan is. He was obviously a late addition to the coaching staff. We know the track record and the experience that he has. But I don't know what the plan is for Coach Vrabel. I don't know if he's going to be on the sideline or if he's going to be up in the box or not there at all on Sunday. I'm not sure. Is it more of like a consultant type of role? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Once training camp starts, we should have a better feel for that. It's actually a good question that we need to ask to Kevin Stefanski. I am curious to see what the plan is for Coach Vrabel, because obviously he's a valuable. I hate to use the word call him a tool. Because usually it's a negative, but in a positive way, he could be very valuable. As a sounding board for Kevin Stefanski if he wants it. I don't know. Kevin Stefanski's got his contract extension. He's in a great place with the Browns, a better place than any coach has been in forever. He's got nothing to worry about. I don't think Kevin is worried about Mike Vrabel looking to take his job. So I don't think there's any concern from that standpoint. Yeah, and Andy says, I know he's in an advisory, that he's legally. Yeah, I don't know. That's why I said he might not be there at all on Sundays because he's more like a consultant type of thing. I don't know the rules on that, if there's some rule about, depending on your title, you're allowed to be on the sideline or not. But I guess we'll get that cleared up here hopefully in the next couple of weeks. Try to get somebody. I'm not going to training camp because we do the show during training camp hours. But I can text one of the Browns beat reporters, and we could probably get an answer to that question of what the game plan will be for Coach Vrabel once the season begins, and where he might be. Don says, Spencer Howard, send him to the Burger Barn at where. Yeah, Spencer Howard should not be pitching in the big leagues. The guy's bounced around from team to team. He stinks. And starting him today was kind of conceding a win in this game. And with the score now 6-1, it certainly feels that way. Real quick on the Cavaliers, nothing. There's nothing to report when it comes to the Cavaliers, unfortunately. I still think it seems like the first news we're going to get may be outside of obviously the Donovan Mitchell extension, and we could see Evan Mobley extension here. But I think the next news we may get is that somebody wants to sign Isaac Okoro. He's a restricted free agent, and that could turn into a potential sign and trade deal. We were discussing today a three-way trade I saw on The Athletic. And in this trade, the Cavs would have gotten Brandon Ingram and Cole Anthony. The Magic would get Darius Garland, and the Pelicans would get Wendell Carter Jr., Jet Howard, and Karis LeVert. I don't think that trade makes sense. I mean, Orlando would love that trade. I don't know why New Orleans would make that trade. I don't think the Cavs would make that trade either, honestly. I don't know. Unless you're getting Jimmy Butler, I think you're running it back with the big four, and you got to make some changes to the rest of the bench. And they turn Isaac Okoro into Dorian Finney-Smith, who might be a better fit. I think that might be the way to go at this point. All right, folks. Thanks as always for joining me. I appreciate it every Thursday at 2 p.m. Although, I will be live next week. It's the week after that I won't be, because I'll be away. But thanks for joining me. Thanks to Max and Monzo for producing. If you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the like button, and go check out my podcast from earlier this week on Monday. And yesterday's podcast, in which I spoke with Steve Berline, who had some really interesting stuff on Deshaun Watson and Nick Chubb and the rest of the Browns. That's it for me for now. I'll talk to you next time. Where else but right here in the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by Bet Rivers. See you, everybody.